Katherine here. So let me tell you a little bit about Katherine. Her talk is about from expert to obvious hire, the authority corporations actually trust. Katherine Tuominen is a marketing strategist, publicist, and founder of Catalyst Brown Strategy. As an award-winning international PR and communications agency, supporting 100 plus brands across health, wellness, technology, and regulated industries with over 100 Oh, sorry. With over a decade, well, it works, spanning film, entertainment, including Fox and Warner Brothers. Just as we just got off with Richard talking about visibility in media, it's going to just lead you to the next thing. Her clients have also been featured in Marie Claire, Fast Company, and Forbes. So welcome to the stage, Katherine. Let me bring you up. There you go. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for a wonderful, warm introduction. I'm so excited to meet everyone. All right, so diving in, I did actually create a very brief deck in case you'd like some visual aids, but really my intention for this call is to be more of a workshop and get to know where you're currently at and what would be most supportive. So obviously it's been an incredible lineup of speakers and so many great insights up until this point, and I really want to add to that rather than doubling up or covering things you already know. So with all that said, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see that? Okay, awesome. So, a couple of things. Yes, as you're well aware, many of you, is it fair? Actually, let's quick raise of hands. Who here is currently kind of like a solopreneur getting their business into corporations? Is that mostly who we're working with? Perfect. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, good. That fits then. So in short, you're up against people who already have deals with these corporations that have existed for years. Some of them are going back for their second, third year round, and there's always things like budget cycles to consider. So we really look at this from the lens of leveraging what you can within your story and then using that to strengthen a stronger pitch. So, yeah, as already covered, thank you for such a warm intro, Erin. We're very familiar with this space. We specialize more in health and wellness industries. So, someone here mentioned they were doing wellness workshops within businesses, and that's very much up our alley. And we've supported our clients to get brand collaborations. We've supported them to get sponsorship deals as well as get booked with annual corporate deals, whether that be through speaking, lunch and learns, or ongoing workshops. And we also support with pitching and refining when it comes to investors and the like. So one of the things that we've noticed that's often a huge gap for this industry is really knowing how to anchor in your authority. So this may have already been covered by a previous person. Oh, great. Chats. Yes, excellent. This may have already been covered by a previous person, but in short, a question we often get asked is, how do I truly cover my UVP or unique value proposition? Why should they say yes to me instead of saying yes to someone else who's already worked with them? And one of the easiest things you can do early on is build up your proof stack. So what you want to do is really shorten the path to saying yes, and we'll cover exactly what that looks like today. We'll also briefly cover how to position around funded problems and really understanding what are they looking for in terms of an ROI and how can you directly support that so it is a no-brainer for them. And then, of course, ways to amplify your credibility beyond what you've already built, and then nailing the pitch and structuring the deal. So, starting with the most obvious point, which is anchoring into your own story. At the end of the day, even if you're doing B2B, you're still going B2C because ultimately you're working with a person or a human at the other end of that. So, if you are pitching to corporations, you're often first starting with HR, especially if you're going more from that health and wellness lens, or you're speaking to their sales or business development team who would then be implementing your software or structure into their ecosystem. Sometimes you could also be pitching to a mergers and acquisitions expert or lead. And this is actually a great time to be pitching your services because the companies are often going through major transitions and they're looking for ways to unify both of the companies together through whether it be workshops, programs, or their next initiative. So heading over to your story, what you want to do is, well, actually, I'll just double check. Have you covered storytelling yet in the other sessions or not yet? Sorry, I think it's on mute.
Not yet.
Okay, great. Oh, excellent. That's great. So, in terms of anchoring into your story, a lot of people say, well, I don't really have an interesting story, or they're like, where do I begin summarizing 30 years of my life, or more? And the summary that we often say is much like when you go to the cinemas and you see your favorite hero go through, they might start with an inciting incident, which is a way of saying something sparked change. And then somewhere in the middle, they hit a problem or they hit a wall. And that is what fueled them to kind of push through and create that change and then reach that solution. So, according to the three act structure, that's a really great way to start unpacking your own life story. And when you look back, you'll often notice that there are these sort of anchor points that anyone can apply to. So, in many of your cases, I'm guessing you recognize that there was a gap in the industry, whether it was this company wasn't taking this seriously and it led you to really believe that your solution could be what they truly need. That is very much the problem or that down point in the story that you can emphasize. So, finding out your turning point would be really helpful for you to figure out how to start shaping your story around that pain point and giving your audience that aha moment. And so, another example that kind of furthers to this story, zooming out, once you have the kind of three act structure, you can then really ask yourself, well, what is your long-term vision? And does this story that you're telling actually directly support that? So we work with a lot of female founders, and a big issue that happens in the founder community is if you're too founder-led, or if you're perceived as being too focused on you being reliant on the role, you'll actually get a lower exit strategy, or your valuation may be compromised. And so you need to look at what is your long-term goal. Do you eventually want to sell your frameworks to these businesses and step away from the company? Or are you happy to continue running lunch and learns or workshops to the company into the indefinite future? And that will help you kind of zoom out and figure out, well, how much of the you should be placed into the story? And when do you want to start flipping that narrative to be more about the you of the audience or the community or corporation that you're speaking to? So to give you an example, there are so many, but Bobbi Brown is a good one to use because she recently sold her company. And because her company was associated with her name, this caused issues for her because she was then limited with what she could do with the next venture. And so this is one of the things you want to be very mindful of when you are shaping your story or your narrative. Yes, exactly. And then lastly, you want to decide what the anchor means before the market decides it for you. So we work in a lot of like crisis management and very high heavy compliance industries. And what this means is if you're not mindful of the risks of sharing your story in a certain way or what's happening in relation to your industry and the wider ecosystem, you could eventually hit a wall where you're perceived or where this kind of comes back to bite you. So yeah, I might give the example of the person who mentioned her healthcare, health and wellness structure. Obviously, that's always changing, but if you're not mindful of things like mental health apps or the way AI is shifting things within the mental health space, or even the next generation being so heavily using things like apps and software, you might not be selling the right tool because you haven't given it enough context into how your story relates to what else is happening in the wider sphere. So that's a really quick rundown on how we would start to break down your story from a very overarching standpoint. And I hope you can see from here how you can easily pull a couple of those key elements into whether it be a bio, a brief, or a pitch deck. Do we have any questions about this so far? Just double checking Zoom. Sometimes there's a lag. Oh yeah, there's a couple. Oh yeah, no. Okay, awesome. Easy. Oh, thank you. That's nice. Yes. Well, with all that said, we'll keep going, but you'll get these slides as well if you want them. Just food for thought in terms of how to start summarizing this. Something that I haven't covered here is your unique value proposition, which will definitely keep coming up, but that is in short, why should we hire you or why you? And my shortcut for this is it's often a mix of your entire life outside of work. So that can be things like travel, your family, your passions, and what is that common thread between all the different roles you've had to bring you to where you are today and why this matters to you so much. That's what you want to look at. You want to look at what is that one thing that has remained true to me throughout every career shift, transition, and the rest, and then use that to tie into why it makes you unique and why they should hire you. So instead of them seeing this as separate or instead of them seeing this as not relevant, they're really looking at your body of work throughout your career and life. Okay, heading on to the proof stack. So this is often, I think, also somewhat challenging in the sense that people might not have hard metrics, but if you're going to a corporation, they're going to always ask, what is the return on investment? How can we accurately and actually measure this? And so one of the things you want to weave into any of your workshops or offerings is how to make their life easier when it comes to tracking the results that you've delivered. So for example, if you're going in and you're offering, like maybe once a month, you're offering some kind of workshop or insight or leadership guidance, you want the people in that event to either do a survey or to provide some feedback or to have a different software or tool that enables you to gather these insights and data points. The reason why this matters is because obviously the more you do it, the more you can clearly show this is the result that we're getting your employees. And so when they're looking at, is it worth doing this again next year? How can we measure these results? All of that is baked in. And the reason I mentioned this early is because when you're looking at packaging your offer, you want to actually bake this into the offer that you're packaging. So having something like a survey, a reporting tool, an ROI measurement tracker, any of these sorts of things can really help them say yes to you instead of someone else. So zooming out in terms of how to build your proof stack, a couple of things you can do if this is your first time going to a corporate or if you're trying to broaden your networks. One thing to do is, of course, look at your kind of category proof. So this could be things that are happening in the wider industry that support what you're building. It could be research reports, papers, recent industry trends, anything from a trusted source. And you can gather this in terms of seeing, we understand the wider picture and here's how we fit into that. And more importantly, how it's relevant to them. Then you also want to look at outcome proof. So this may be things you've done one-to-one with clients or in group offerings or in the past through other practices. So this is basically gathering, all the things you hear a lot, testimonials, endorsements, references, case studies, and really try and keep this as specific to the outcomes that are most relevant to what you're pitching to them. And then, of course, institutional proof. So this is more around named results specifically, especially, so, a lot of people like to toss around logos, especially in the public relations space, but it's not just sort of saying, oh, we've worked with McKinsey or we've worked with the Big Four. Instead, it's sort of giving them a glimpse into what that actual result or, I guess, piece really created in the end. And so that will help them realize that it's not just kind of like a surface perception, but you really do understand the industry and it's based in these verifiable metrics. And then lastly, the process proof. So this is more about making it easy for them to say yes and what it actually looks like working with you. So this could be a demo, it could be a mock-up, or it could be a glimpse into these are the 4 stages for us to work together. Anything that makes it easy for them to bridge the gap between, oh, this sounds interesting, and this sounds interesting, and actually it's very easy for us to implement, and we know what those next steps look like. So that's a big thing I often see is missing in pitches as well. Any questions about this so far?
Yes, I have my hand up.
Oh, yes. Hi.
Hi. So I want to go a little bit back to a slide where you were talking about the story and then link it to building the proof stack. So it's okay even if you stay on the slide where you are. Because if you have many stories, because it's like a resume, someone comes into the industry, maybe they have 5 years of experience. Another one comes and they have 25 years of experience. At 25 years of experience and more, which story do I tell?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I get asked this question a lot. The story you tell is the one that's most related to the offer you're presenting and what the company most likely wants. So we kind of get into it a little bit more below, but research is going to be the first place to start. You can tell with enough research, you'll actually be able to pick up who have they worked with in the past, what other vendors have they contracted, and where are they currently spending their resources and energy. Sometimes they have to publicly state this in documentation. And so from gathering this research, you can then assess, oh, their current focus is employing more women, or their current focus is making sure their systems are catered to minority groups, or whatever it may be. And so you're able to then pick the stories that directly support what it is you're promoting and what they most likely want.
So then when I'm stacking them, it means I also have my own reserve of stories so that I'm able to put it as proof. So my second question is, what if your experience, most of it is with organizations, whether either you had an NDA or you had protected populations where you can't easily talk about it publicly? How then do I can get the stories, but how do I even present myself even on LinkedIn?
Yes, we have this issue a lot. So a lot of our clients, exactly as you said, have NDAs, or they're working with client-patient confidentiality, and it's they're under no circumstances can they share the details of what they've discovered. There's a few ways to do this. One is you can do a research report where you gather all of the insights that you've collected over time, and then translate it through a report where it's either anonymous or aggregated, and you're starting to figure out patterns within what you've seen. So that can be very effective and a strong proof point. The other thing you can do is, as you're mindful of, most likely remove any links to who that person may be specifically. So if it's a case study or an endorsement, you don't have to give that full name or more details. You can keep it sort of open-ended, and that way it still holds as an example, and people can tell if it's a real story or just sort of a quick AI made up review. And that comes down to the details and the quality of emphasizing how it relates with your framework. So yeah, I would say those two things are a good ballpark. And then from the corporate standpoint, you can at least mention the industry and kind of give them some context on the general scope in terms of the problem, the solution, and then your outcomes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so heading down here. All right, so heading on to 3. Hopefully you can all see this. Yes, so a couple of things which you kind of touched on already, which was around the research piece. So one of the things that is really helpful when it comes to structuring your packages or pitches to these different companies is, what are they already willing to fix, or what have they already invested in? And most of the time you can find this information if you do enough digging. It could be on their LinkedIn where someone posted saying, we loved that lunch and learn workshop, or it could be on their public pages where they say, we're delighted to introduce this speaker or this expert into our teams. Or it could be in their kind of like annual reports or the like. So basically you just need to dig for it, but most of the time you can find this information. Sometimes you can't find exactly who it was that they selected, but there's at least a line or a note saying what their current focus is for that period. And this will again offer you an excellent framework in terms of the direction they're heading in. Maybe on that as well, specificity is key. So anything that's broad brushstroke, like we're now investing in our employee well-being, that's still too broad. You want to get even more granular to figure out what aspects of employee well-being. Is it because they want to focus more on the productivity end? Is it because they've recently come under fire for something that was problematic? What is actually motivating that decision? So that can be really helpful in informing next steps. Oh, yes, thank you, Erin. Exactly. Looking at annual reports on what initiatives they are looking to accomplish this year. That's a huge one, absolutely. And yes, true, only for public companies, but yes, maybe for the smaller companies as well. I think often they can sometimes do their own internal reports, or if you're subscribed to their email list, they can also share insights on what they're focused on or some of the personal wins that they might be experiencing. And I think following company C-suites or HR managers on LinkedIn is also a great way to get a glimpse inside of what they might be working on or focused on. Next is translating expertise into language backed by hard metrics. Yes, we've kind of already covered this. And then personalize the KPIs on what they already report on. So this is another thing that we've observed from some of our clients who have gone on to doing mental health workshops or ongoing retainers. And one of the biggest things that we've noticed that can bridge that gap is using the language and the KPIs that they're already heavily focused on, and then weaving that into your own surveying systems or reporting metrics. So again, this makes it easier for them to bridge that gap. Okay, so quick note on amplifying credibility. A lot of people might think, how far does public relations really go these days? Is it just a logo? Do names like Forbes really matter? And the reality is a lot of these companies and corporations still very much value the use of these brand names, whether it be Fast Company, Business Insider, Forbes, all those sort of big business brands that you can think of, they hold a certain level of credibility. And so this is where public relations can really come into play. I won't spend too much time on this because you've already heard from other speakers, but in short, if you are able to share your story, the one that you worked on above, and pitch it to relevant journalists or get that story picked up by different publications and media representatives, this can actually be one of the things that gets them to say yes to you instead of someone else. So we saw this firsthand. One of our clients, she went on to doing a TED Talk, and then we got her booked onto a CNTV morning show. And from that booking, we updated her pitch deck to have the CNTV morning show 10-minute clip plus the TED Talk logo and like a snippet of what it was about. And she had been on the fence in terms of, I think she was up to stage 6 in terms of calls, bookings, and the rest. And that company was saying, come back to us, maybe. And I'm not saying this was the only thing that got it over the edge, but I do think that this was a huge help in terms of finally getting them to commit, because 2 weeks after they saw the updated pitch deck with these 2 elements, they said yes, and she got one of her biggest corporate brand deals ever. So this definitely signifies that it can still be supportive to lean on public relations for these benefits. So a couple of things to support your credibility if you're DIYing it or in the early stages. One is you can consider, who can I partner with to fill in the gaps? And that can be both in knowledge and strengthening credibility. Obviously, there are so many associations, networks, and different ways to go about this. One thing that I would strongly suggest, piggying off of Erin's great talk around public speaking, you can actually do a co-pitch or do a panel talk where you're pitching with someone else in that space who is an expert. So it could be a doctor, or it could be anyone who's trusted and well regarded, but they might be more researchers. Maybe they're not as great when it comes to public speaking, but you have more of that public speaking flair, or that I guess the frameworks. And so together it makes it easier to get bookings on things like panels and the like, if they're looking for almost like dual pitches. So that's something else to consider as well. Then establishing a referral working relationship. Yes, it sounds so obvious, but I feel like it's often the thing that we also forget about or are hesitant to reach out to. But I promise that someone in your network who can give you that first warm introduction. So it's kind of just a matter of looking through your LinkedIn, looking through your existing physical relationships, and figuring out, who do I know who works at X who might be able to give me a bit of a warm in, and leveraging that as much as possible. And then the other thing I said here is, what is one move you can make now to pitch your story to a journalist or speaker stages? Yes, again, covering what we already spoke about. With that, we have a few free resources that you can sign up for. One is HARO, which stands for Help a Reporter Out. The other is Quoted, which is basically where journalists reach out saying, we need an expert to speak on X. And then you usually have about 4 days to 7 days to pitch yourself. And then they'll say, yes, we want to feature you on this article, or not at this stage. Sometimes they won't respond, but in general, you'll be able to see relevant, timely requests in terms of what journalists are actually asking for and put your name at the front of their radar, which is great. So that's what these three options are, and they're all free to start. The other thing you can do is look for CFP, so that's short for call for papers, or CFS, which is short for call for speakers, and see what current speaker stages are available and start, piggyback off other speakers, put together your speaker kit and start putting your name forward there and abstracts. Then lastly, we have who can you reach out to for a high quality endorsement, case study, or testimonial. So, LinkedIn endorsements, that could also be previous people you've worked with, friends of friends, colleagues, previous clients, and the rest. The more hard metrics, both qualitative and quantitative, that you can gather, the easier it will be for them to say yes. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes left. I'm going to try and race through the last bit so we have enough time for Q&As. But just a couple of things that I get asked about a lot. We cold pitch all the time, but we also have existing networks. So in terms of a cold pitch, our average cold pitch close rate is around 30%, which is very high for the industry average, which is less than like 5%. But it depends on obviously what you're doing, what you're specializing in. And most of the time we can lean on our existing network, so we don't even need to necessarily cold pitch. But with all that said, if you have a dream company or if you have a dream publication that you'd love to get featured in, don't be afraid of reaching out to them and just seeing where that email can take you, because it's always worth giving it a shot. So in terms of the top suggestions we have for pitches, whether it be pitching to companies or pitching to vendors, sponsors, brand ambassadors, you name it, you want to make sure it's hyper personalized. And we recommend personalizing it in that first paragraph. So what I mean by personalized is not their name, like that just goes without saying, but also things like, what have they been working on lately? What was a recent post that they shared? What was an award they won or a declaration that they've recently claimed? Whatever it may be, you want to show them in that first paragraph you've done their research, not just on what they're recently working towards, but their kind of embodied work that has led them to this moment. And then from there, you also want to consider, who they might represent. So if it's an HR manager, obviously they're representing both the company and the employees. So speaking to them, but also speaking to their secondary audience or the primary audience that they're serving. And then likewise, the overall brand, quote unquote, that they represent. So whether that is the company itself or a publication, the same rules apply. So in this way, when you think about personalization, you almost have to kind of personalize it 3 times. Once for the person you're pitching to, once for the brand that they represent or the company that they work for, and then once for the audience that they're catered to or speaking on behalf of. And so in that sense, when you're figuring out what to put in that first paragraph, you want to touch on these 3 elements to really show you understand who they are, what they do, and why this is relevant. So heading on to timeliness, this is slightly more geared towards like the public relations side, but it still applies to companies. A lot of companies have financial terms that they work within. So they might have particular periods where they actually need to spend their whole budget or the budget that they've allotted for this particular piece. And that can be a really good time to approach them. So again, this kind of goes back to research and the specific industry that you're focusing on, but figuring out the timeliness for that particular company can be a good reason why they say yes to you now instead of saying, come back to us in a year and a half. So that's another piece. And then from the public relations side, again, just figuring out what might be considered newsworthy or what's currently trending in the space. Heading on to hooks, regardless of whether it's a HR manager reading it or a journalist, it has to have some kind of hook that is insightful and catchy for them. So, don't be afraid to play around with that subject line or that first kind of couple of words. Make it easy to skim, make it easy for them to digest. And then, of course, relevance. So this goes back to kind of like the meat of what you're pitching and suggesting, but really making sure it's aligned with their goals, as we've already suggested. Something else as well that's really easy to get wrong is sending it to the right person. You can use tools like Apollo or Hunter.io to scrape correct email addresses instead of trying to send it to like hello at or contact at. You really want to send it to a specific person, otherwise it's going to get lost in the mix. Even if you send it to someone who you think is a specific person and it turns out to be someone else, that's still better because they can then redirect you to the correct person. You can also use LinkedIn Premium for this as well. And then, oh, just a note though, don't message journalists on LinkedIn. They will get annoyed. But you can still use it to gather information and then message them on via email. And then succinct, yeah, as I said, just kind of making it easy to absorb and for the most part, keeping it relatively simple. Okay, any quick questions about this before we head to the final section? Nope. Okay, great. So moving on to structuring the deal so it compounds. This is one of the biggest things that I also see is often a miss. You want to be looking at selling the whole year or selling, a 2+ year contract deal, or at the very least 6 months. And I see this all the time with founders who have such great intentions and they just want to almost like, offer one workshop or one lunch and learn and then hope that that will lead to more opportunities. Instead of doing it that way, you want to bake in that annual or 2-year deal from that very first conversation. So a way to do this is by offering a paid pilot or a one-time sort of tester that gives them almost like an MVP or a sample of what they can expect, and then you'll get all the good reviews and everything else, and then that automatically leads into the longer contract. So this means that if the paid pilot doesn't go well, they are not obligated to, they can basically cancel and they're not obligated to finish the rest. But if it does go well, it makes it so easy for them to basically leave it because they've already agreed to the rest of what you've pitched. So that's one of the easiest simplest tips that I would recommend that I often see people don't bake in from the get-go. And then proof in motion. Yeah, exactly. So it basically shows them that you've already proven yourself and then they don't need to do anything else on their end. It just kind of keeps ticking through and rolling on based on the success of that first one. So yeah, what changes when this all happens? Basically, you stop chasing because you start getting warm intros. You stop over explaining your value because you already have those kind of key valuable metrics to lean on time and time again. And you become the answer to who do we already trust for this and the go-to person. So if you do want to find out more info or continue chatting to me, I do complimentary consultations, and we also have this thing called an impact and income tracker, and we have a speaker list for over 1,000 opportunities. So this is just one of the many resources, but just reach out and I'm happy to share any and all of the above. So that leaves us just under 10 minutes for any last Q&As. Let's see, I'll see if there's any questions or hands raised. Oh, thank you. Yes, Erin's just dropped in one of our resources. Excellent. I think that's it then. No more questions?
Let's show some love for Katherine in the chat, please. Any questions you want to come up and ask? This was some really good stuff on, especially the story part. And I'm glad you addressed that because I don't think none of the speakers so far have addressed that today. So that was really good stuff. Any questions for Katherine? Yes, Adina, come on up.
Catherine just mentioned that there's a database, I think you said, of 1,000 speakers. Did I understand that correctly, Catherine?
Sorry, the first thing.
The database of speakers that you mentioned, I think she would like you to repeat those, and if you have links for those too to put in the chat, that would be great.
Is this where companies ask you for a speaker? Is that what you mean? Or is this people who are speakers and they put their info there?
So what we've done is we've gone through and gathered current speaking opportunities. So you can filter it by industry, category, and location. And so you can then self-apply to these open calls. Some of them are rolling, some of them are closed, some of them need to be refreshed, but we try and refresh it once a month. So it's kind of like a database for you to start pitching.
Okay. And you're going to show us the link for that?
It's in the chat, yes.
Okay. Sounds good. That's all I had.
Oh, that's the free gift link.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's in the chat. Okay. Thank you, because I didn't get that part either. Okay. So yeah, that's awesome. That database where you can search for opportunities, that's amazing. So, all right. Any other questions for Katherine? Dr. Ruby, I saw that. I saw you raise your hand. You don't even have to digitally do it.
Katherine, did you say you offer free consultations?
Yes, I do. It's
How would we
useful.
reach you? Is it on this handout that you provided to us in the
We can
chat?
put that in the VIP.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for an informative presentation.
I appreciate that. Yes.
All right. Last call for questions for Katherine. All right, Katherine, thanks so much for coming in today. We appreciate your contribution to our event, and we'll see you again soon.
Likewise. Thanks so much, everyone. Speak soon.
Yeah. And Katherine, I put a chat in there, so just check it before you leave.
Oh, thank you. Great. I'll check that now.
All righty. So, Aaron, my computer's not cooperating to bring you up if you want to come up. So this seems like another good time to remind everyone that well, Katherine, you're familiar with these VIP bonuses. I'll put it in the chat, but can you sort of remind everyone of some of these amazing VIP bonuses?
Yeah. The VIP, we have so many great things. I mean, you've been listening. Now, Katherine just said she can give, a consultation to you. She's going to give me the chat, get in my chat so I can go put it up there. So if you are VIP, you'll have access to that. A lot of the speakers are giving away their time and to get on a call with them. So that's available if you are on VIP. They have those links in there for those who are VIP. I've seen that. We also have all of our, beautiful freebies that we've given away, the challenge. You'll get to come to the challenge as a VIP for the VIPs so that in the 18th to the 21st, so you'll have that access. You'll also have the 1 hour call with me. If you want to, anything that's been coming up for you that you want some feedback on. I mean, we just did our infomercial, which I thought was hopefully helpful to you guys. And I posted mine in the chat, but if it's something you want to work on, you want to jump on the call for that, you also have access to that. And then, like I said, I'm going to put together a master class with Senator Mona Das, who's going to be talking about negotiations. And then I am working on my video guy. Let's see if I can get him to come in and do something special for you guys, and maybe even give you a really discounted price to help you create your own speaker reel. He has created my speaker reel, and he created my the video that plays before I go on stage. So an MC will announce me. They'll play that as I'm walking up on stage. Huge credibility builder. It's not me talking about myself. It's the screen talking about me, and it just feels different than, hi, I'm Aaron, here's what I've done, listen to me, that's all about me. That just is third party validation. So those are the kind of gifts you get in the VIP. Don't miss out on those, especially if you were like, hey, I really wanted to talk to one of these people, individually. Their links are in their VIP, so make sure you do that, and we'll keep creating more special bonuses as we go. Thanks.
And there's a question from Michelle. How does she access the VIP? She signed up this morning. So there should be an email or?
Yep, I will be sending out, because a lot of people upgraded today. I sent it at the end of the day. I gave you guys all of it. So I'm going to wait to the end of the day today and give you the link that goes to that dashboard. So you'll have all of those things. I just was hoping to just get through each day and then be able to do it. So I'm not doing it every single minute because that'd be a lot. Thank you,
We
Michelle.
are not at the end of the day yet. We actually have 2 more speakers coming, and they are both, I know them both personally. They're both going to be amazing. So I believe